This is not a happy story. There are probably 1,000 ways I could have handled it, a million words I could have said, and a billion things I could have. Well, you get the idea. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Like any relationship with its different textures, moods, and emotions, the best way to start this one is with white. I've been working at a small hookah lounge for a few months. Because it was a slow day, I found myself alone with a single customer, a young woman my own age. To pass the time, I started sweeping when she caught my eye. She was a regular that had come to study. Normally, she sat with a pretty big group. She seemed unapproachable. But on that day, she was alone. She seemed completely consumed in what she was doing, lost to the world. And then, she wasn't. Despite the initial awkwardness and with the ice presumably broken, we began to talk. Amazingly, we had a lot in common, and we ended up talking through the rest of my shift, the next day, and then the next. After a while, we were hanging out outside work. More time had passed, and I eventually introduced her to one of my childhood friends. Not long after that, they began dating. Despite the fact that I couldn't spend as much time with her, I was genuinely happy for them. Ironically, as their bond grew stronger, it began to reveal the weaknesses between my girlfriend and I. The colors that had once seemed so bright and vivid had become faded, dull, almost gray. Eventually, our relationship came to an end. Seeing how depressed I was, she seemed to take it upon herself to make sure that I wasn't alone, as she began to include me in whatever she was doing. It was around this time that I began to realize how attached I was becoming to her, and before I knew it, the clouds had parted, and I could feel the sun again. Like every couple, problems began to appear in their relationship. Eventually, problems became arguments, arguments became anger, and anger became breakups, which led them to becoming an on-again and off-again couple. It all came to a head a few months later. By that time, I had become the person that she would vent to about the relationship. Most of our time together was spent with her in tears, while I tried to cheer her up with cliched and trite sayings. The more this would happen, the more I realized that their relationship was over, and it became clear that my attachment to her had grown beyond simple infatuation into something infinitely more complex. It dawned on me that there was something that I could do, but if I started the ball rolling, its impact would likely sabotage any future that I could have with her, and would even make me the villain of my own story. I realized that the time had come. Instead of the comfort that she was expecting, lies began to spout from my tentative mouth. Growing more and more comfortable with my decision, the lies began to come easier. I began to tell her of a fictional relationship that he had had on the side. Despite the ease of my lying, my heart was breaking as much as her own. But I kept my voice steady, knowing that I had to follow through with my decision, and knowing that in the long run, it would save her a lot of grief. I could only take comfort in the fact that she was finally moving forward, even as she was leaving me behind. Which brings us to now. Staring into her eyes, I realized that she knew exactly what I had done, and despite her gratefulness of my actions, the trust that we once had was broken, leaving us as we were, strangers. Watching her walk away, I thought back to the day that I had made my decision, feeling the familiar ache and the feeling of the pain of knowing that I was breaking the shoulder. that she once cried on.
Every day that I can't get away from all your shades of